You open your eyes, but there is nothing to see. The world is a suffocating, leathery darkness. It is damp, smells of mud and decay, and presses in from all sides. You can hear things. A muffled thumping from beyond your prison wall, a rhythmic, deep vibration that feels less like sound and more like a disturbance in the very liquid you float in. And you can hear other sounds, closer. A frantic scraping, a series of desperate, pathetic chirps from beings trapped in identical prisons all around you. This is your symphony of birth, a chorus of the doomed. You feel an ancient, hardwired instinct take over. You raise your snout, on which sits a single, disposable protuberance known as an egg tooth, and begin your own work. You push, you scrape, you fight against the shell that has been your entire universe. The darkness gives way to a blinding crack of light. Your first glimpse of the world is through a slimy, self-made wound in the ceiling of your home. And that's when the narrator's voice cuts in, dripping with the cheerful apathy of a cosmic bureaucrat. Consciousness returns to nature's most patient thug. Hello there. It seems you've made it through the first filter. Congratulations. Official designation, Crocodilus. A name that echoes with Roman gravitas and the weight of ages. But you are known to the world simply as the Crocodile. A name derived from the Greek for pebble worm, which is a spectacular underselling of the violence you will eventually represent. It's a title that a certain species of bipedal ape will come to associate with primordial terror, with merciless, unthinking power. But we know better, don't we? We know that power is just a long, boring wait for a meal, and your primordial status is simply a testament to the fact that you found a design that was good enough millions of years ago and never saw the need for a single, innovative thought thereafter. Your grand entrance is less a birth and more an excavation. Those chirps you and your siblings are making, a chorus of reptilian desperation, are a signal. You are calling for your mother, and she answers. A shadow blots out the sky, a mountain of scaly indifference. She begins to dig, not with gentle, nurturing paws, but with a maw designed to snap the spine of a water buffalo. She unearths your clutch, a writhing mass of 50 identical, snack-sized versions of herself. This is your family. And as she delicately cracks open an unhatched egg, you witness your first lesson in crocodile love. It walks a terrifyingly fine line between assistance and appetizer. The very jaws that will one day be your greatest weapon are, for now, your most immediate existential threat. She may, in a stunning display of maternal restraint, gently scoop a few of you into her mouth to carry you to the water. You tumble into that cavern of death, a place lined with rows of conical daggers and smelling of past kills. This is the safest you will ever be in your entire, miserable life. Surrounded by the very tools of annihilation, you are briefly protected. Do not get used to it. Your new home is a nursery, which in crocodile terms is a shallow, muddy patch of water where the odds of survival are roughly 1%. You are a statistic waiting to happen. You look at your brothers and sisters, 50 of them, all with the same vacant, predatory stare. This isn't a family reunion. It's the opening round of a battle royal where the prize is simply not being eaten today. Sibling rivalry is a human concept. For you, it's just competition. And sometimes, when hunger gnaws, that competition starts to look a lot like lunch. The first danger you truly face is your own kind. The slightly bigger sibling, the one who hatched 10 minutes earlier, doesn't see a brother. It sees a protein boost. And so begins your juvenile struggle, a period of your life best described as protracted terror. The world is a hierarchy, and you are clinging precariously to the bottom rung. Your list of adversaries is extensive and, frankly, embarrassing. Giant wading birds, like herons and storks, patrol the shallows like feathered assassins, their beaks poised like spears. To them, you are not a future apex predator. You are a self-propelled fish stick. Monitor lizards, those opportunistic land-based cousins, will snatch you from the water's edge without a second thought. Large fish, eagles, even turtles with a particularly bad attitude, they all see you as an easy meal. But the greatest monster in your tiny world wears a familiar face. The constant, looming threat is other, larger crocodiles. An older juvenile, a passing adult. They won't even register the act of consuming you. It will be a reflex, an unthinking gulp. Your existence is predicated on the simple, brutal mathematics of predation. There are many more things that can eat you than things you can eat. Statistically, you are already a ghost. Your life is a rounding error in the grand, bloody ledger of the river. Your primary survival strategy is, to put it mildly, pathetic. You float. You hide. You spend hours, days, pretending to be a piece of driftwood. It's a strategy of absolute, mind-numbing inaction. You remain perfectly still in the murky shallows, hoping that the universe, in its relentless hunger, simply overlooks you. It's a game of cosmic hide and seek where the penalty for being found is instantaneous digestion. Your camouflage, a mottled pattern of green and brown, is your only real defense. It's like a cheap, off-brand invisibility cloak from a fantasy game that flickers on and off at the worst possible moments. 1 second you are an innocuous part of the scenery. The next you are a very visible, very panicked reptile as the shadow of a fish-eagle passes overhead. The sheer amount of your life spent in this state of terrified stillness is staggering. You are not living. You are simply not dying. Yet. Of course, you can't just float forever. You must learn the family business. Violence. You have to learn to hunt, and your first forays into this craft are a masterclass in clumsy failure. Your prey isn't the mighty wildebeest or the formidable zebra. Your prey is a dragonfly, a tadpole, a water beetle that probably doesn't even know you exist. You stalk these gargantuan beasts with all the intensity of your larger relatives, your tiny body coiled, your eyes locked. You lunge, a sudden explosion of misdirected energy, and snap your jaws shut on a mouthful of dirty water and crushed hopes. The dragonfly has already moved on, utterly unaware of the life or death drama that just unfolded beneath it. You see the adults perform their signature move, the death roll, a maneuver of such torsional force it can rip limbs from sockets. You, in your ambitious youth, decide to practice. Your target, a waterlogged leaf. You clamp your minuscule jaws onto it and spin. You rotate furiously, a tiny, mud-colored ballerina of futility, achieving nothing but a profound sense of dizziness and a silent, mocking judgment of the nearby frogs. This is how you learn. Through failure, through embarrassment, and through the constant, gnawing fear that your next clumsy lunge will be your last. Then, one day, something shifts. Years of this pathetic struggle, of near misses and lucky escapes, have somehow paid off. You didn't get eaten. You managed to swallow enough insects and small fish to fuel your growth. The world begins to fear you more than it pities you. You have survived the statistical call. You are an adult. And what an adult you are. You are now a magnificent engine of destruction. A multi-ton torpedo of cold-blooded rage encased in armored scutes. Your pathetic juvenile chirp has deepened into a guttural, terrifying bellow that can make the very water around you dance. The birds that once hunted you now flee at your approach. The fish that once nibbled at your toes are now a mere appetizer. You have become the apex predator. This is the peak. This is the life that was promised by your genes. You are the king of the riverbank. Your days are spent in a state of supreme, lazy arrogance. You bask on a prime stretch of sun-drenched mud, a reptilian monarch surveying your kingdom. You are beholden to nothing. Your power is absolute. You can afford to wait. You can lie submerged for hours, only your eyes and nostrils breaking the surface, a living periscope of death. When a thirsty antelope or a foolish wild boar wanders down to drink, you don't chase it. You simply let it come to you. The explosion of your attack is a thing of terrible beauty, a sudden, violent eruption from the water that ends in a snap of bone and a swirl of red. You drag your prize into the depths, your false sense of security as full and bloated as your stomach. Life has, by all objective measures, improved. The constant, shrill terror of youth has been replaced by a deep, rumbling confidence. You have, against all odds, won the game. Or so you think. Just when your existence seems to have stabilized into a comfortable routine of eating and basking, a new, far more insidious problem emerges. It's a problem worse than being hunted, because it's a problem that comes from within. You have discovered the soul-crushing misery of crocodile society. The ironic twist is this: having conquered the entire food chain, your only worthy adversary is now yourself. Or more accurately, other versions of yourself. The new, sucky reality of your life is the pointless, endless, and brutally violent burden of territorial defense and mating rights. That prime basking spot, it isn't yours. You are merely leasing it, and the rent is paid in blood and teeth. Your days of quiet, smug basking are now punctuated by savage confrontations. Another large male decides he fancies your stretch of mud. There is no negotiation. There is no sternly worded letter. There is only a primal, head-banging, flesh-tearing brawl. You slam your massive skulls together, you bite, you twist, you try to drown one another. It is a prehistoric, aquatic version of a violent homeowners association dispute over who gets to park their carcass in the sunniest spot. You win some, you lose some. You accumulate a tapestry of scars on your hide, each one a testament to another pointless argument over a piece of real estate that looks identical to every other piece of real estate for 100 miles. And for what? For the right to be the dominant male. A title that comes with the grand prize of participating in an even more absurd ritual: courtship. This is the true bureaucratic hell of your existence. All that fighting was just to earn a ticket to the most awkward dance in the natural world. The act of attracting a mate is a masterpiece of bizarre, understated theater. You, the armored killing machine, must now become a suave romantic. You approach a female, and if she doesn't immediately try to bite your face off, you begin the show. You produce a low-frequency, infrasonic hum, a vibration that rumbles through the water like a subterranean growl. It's your version of a love song. You blow bubbles. You gently rub your snouts together. You engage in hours of this tender, almost delicate foreplay, a stark contrast to the unrestrained violence that governs every other aspect of your life. It's a performance of sensitivity from a creature with a brain the size of a walnut, designed for one purpose and one purpose only. And it all culminates in a few fleeting moments of clumsy, thrashing, underwater grappling. It's awkward, it's inefficient, and it's over before you know it. All of that fighting, all of that humming and bubble blowing, all for this brief, undignified transaction. The sole purpose of your peak existence, the biological imperative that drove you to become this dominant force, is to pass on the same flawed, miserable genetic code to another generation destined for the same 1% survival rate. The pointlessness of it all is enough to make you weep, if only you could produce tears of actual emotion. And so the years, perhaps decades, grind on. But you are a machine built of flesh and bone, and all machines eventually break down. Your decline is not a sudden event, but a slow, creeping erosion of the power you once took for granted. You don't get old in the way a mammal does. You don't go gray or frail. You simply continue to grow, but the world grows faster and harder around you. You are a victim of negligible senescence, a wonderfully clinical term which means you don't die of old age, you die of accumulated failure. Your teeth, the very symbols of your reign, are now worn down, chipped, or missing entirely from countless brawls and unfortunate encounters with turtle shells. Your hide, once an impenetrable fortress, is now a tattered roadmap of scar tissue, crisscrossed with the memories of every challenger who ever got a lucky shot in. You are slower. The explosive lunge that once surprised a gazelle is now a telegraphed, sluggish eve. Prey animals, once terrified into stillness, now seem to have an extra half-second to react. They leap away, leaving you with nothing but a mouthful of mud and the quiet humiliation of your own decay. Your status, once absolute, begins to crumble. The younger, more ambitious males that you once swatted away like flies now hold their ground. They see the hesitation in your movements, the weakness in your eyes. They start to encroach on your territory, testing your boundaries, smelling the metaphorical blood in the water. The king is becoming a relic, Your final challenge is not a noble last stand against a worthy foe. It is not a climactic battle against the elements. It is a sad, pathetic squabble that you can no longer win. A younger, stronger male, full of the same pointless vigor you once had, decides your basking spot is now his. The ensuing fight is short, brutal, and deeply undignified. You are overpowered, driven from the prime real estate you fought for your whole life. You are exiled to the margins, the less desirable backwaters where the prey is scarce and the mud is thicker. You have become a reptilian outcast. Your end is as unceremonious as your beginning. There is no roar of defiance, no blaze of glory. There's only the quiet, gurgling fizzle of a life running out of luck. Perhaps, in your exile, you slowly starve. Unable to compete, unable to catch anything substantial, you waste away, your massive frame shrinking until your armored plates hang loose. Or perhaps an infection, a parting gift from your last losing battle, festers in the soupy, warm water. It seeps into your blood, and you grow lethargic, your ancient immune system finally overwhelmed. Or maybe in a final, desperate lunge at a large warthog, a meal that would have been trivial in your prime, you miscalculate. You are gored by a tusk, trampled by hooves, or simply left too wounded and exhausted to drag yourself back to the relative safety of the water. You lie half submerged in the mud, breathing in shallow, ragged gasps. Your mighty body, once the undisputed terror of the river, becomes a floating buffet. The circle of life reveals its punchline. The very turtles and catfish you once hunted now arrive to pick your carcass clean. It is the final indignity. You die not as a king, but as a swamp log, slowly returning to the mud that spawned you. As your immense, scaly form is slowly and methodically disassembled by the river's janitors, the camera of our bleak documentary pans away. It travels just a few hundred yards upstream, to a sun-drenched bank where a familiar mound of rotting vegetation and earth sits. And from within that mound, a faint sound can be heard, a tiny, pathetic chirp. A small, leathery eggshell cracks. A snout, no bigger than a human finger, pokes through into the light. A new generation, 50 strong, carrying your exact same pointless, violent, and statistically doomed genetic blueprint, is about to begin its own identical, tragicomic struggle for a meaningless crown. The cycle resets. The machine starts again. The cosmic joke is retold. So, congratulations. You were a magnificent, terrifying, and ultimately pointless biological machine. You survived everything nature could throw at you just to end up as nutrient sludge. And the punchline? All of that struggle, all of that meaningless violence, was just the opening act. So, that's your life. A short, brutal, and ultimately meaningless cycle, repeated ad nauseam. You'd think that would be enough tragedy for one creature. But you, in your scaly indifference, were unlucky enough to exist at the same time as another, even more problematic primate. An ape so clever it could admire your power, and then invent 1,000 new ways to make it a living hell. And that's when your personal, biological tragedy became a historical catastrophe. Welcome to the main event. The first time one of them saw you, it was probably an accident. A hairy, bipedal ape, clad in poorly cured animal skins, wandered down to the river's edge for a drink. It saw a log floating near the bank, an ordinary, unremarkable log. And then the log opened an eye. Then the log exploded. For this primitive, superstitious creature, whose entire worldview was a confused mess of ghost stories and animal spirits, this was a paradigm-shifting event. It was an encounter with the impossible. A piece of the landscape had just revealed itself to be a monster of incomprehensible speed and violence. Their reaction was a potent, chaotic cocktail of sheer, bowel-loosening terror and profound, slack-jawed awe. How could they process you? You defied their simple categories. You were not quite land, not quite water. You appeared from the silent depths like a vengeful spirit and vanished just as quickly. You were a living contradiction, a nightmare given flesh and teeth. And so they did what they always do with things they don't understand. They tried to turn you into a story. They had to define you, to put you in a box so they could feel they had some measure of control. So, were you a god? Many of them decided you must be. Your power was so absolute, so alien, it could only be divine. In the Fertile Crescent of Egypt, they saw your ferocity, your connection to the life-giving Nile, and they carved your head onto the body of a man. They named you Sobek, the god of the river, of military might, of fertility. They built temples in your honor. They saw you as a divine messenger, a river spirit whose mood could determine the annual flood and thus their very survival. They painted your likeness on tomb walls, hoping to carry your fearsome power into the afterlife. They elevated you to the heavens. Or were you simply a monster? A demon lurking in the water, a threat to their precious, scrofulous livestock and to any child foolish enough to wander too close to the riverbank. You were the beast in the darkness, the cautionary tale told around the flickering fire. The absurdity, of course, is that you were neither. You were a reptile. A highly effective one, certainly, but a reptile nonetheless. Your entire existence was dedicated to thermoregulation, digestion, and the occasional, violent acquisition of calories. You had no divine agenda. You held no demonic malice. You had no opinion whatsoever on their harvest, their wars, or their souls. Your entire complex, supernatural identity, god, monster, spirit, demon, was a fiction they projected onto your scaly, indifferent hide because they simply couldn't handle the truth. That the universe is filled with things that can eat you, and it doesn't have to mean anything. This divine status you'd been granted was, as it turns out, terrible for your long-term health. Being worshipped is a precarious occupation for any creature, but especially for one that is also a walking armory. It didn't take long for the awe to curdle into a different kind of ambition. After all, what better way for a chieftain or a pharaoh to prove his own power than by challenging a god? Killing you became a status symbol. Being painted on a cave wall offered precisely zero ballistic protection from a well-thrown spear. In fact, your divine reputation just made you a more attractive target. You were a conquest. And then came the organized exploitation. They started to learn your ways. They watched your comings and goings, noted your basking spots, understood your hunting patterns. The first organized hunts were not about pest control. They were about prestige and, more importantly, resources. Those divine attributes they admired so much were also incredibly useful. Your hide, so tough it could deflect a predator's bite, could also be fashioned into a surprisingly effective shield. Your teeth, the very instruments of your divine wrath, made for fantastic, intimidating necklaces. They were status symbols for the very apes who claimed to worship you. The hypocrisy was breathtaking. They would pray to you for protection in one breath and hunt you for your parts in the next. The most cynical expression of this practice reached its zenith in Egypt, at places like Crocodileopolis. Here, they bred you in captivity. They raised you in sacred pools, pampered you, fed you, treated you like a living deity. And then, they would kill you, mummify your corpse by the thousands, and sell your tiny, preserved bodies to pilgrims as an offering to your divine form, Sobek. They industrialized your murder as an act of faith. You were killed in your thousands as a tribute to yourself. It was a perfect, closed loop of theological absurdity and commercial enterprise. As these primates grew more ambitious, graduating from scattered huts to permanent settlements, you became an inconvenience. Their pathetic attempts at agriculture and animal husbandry kept bumping up against your millions of years of evolutionary programming. They built their villages on the banks of your rivers, on the shores of your lakes. They brought their soft, slow, delicious livestock right to your front door. And when you did what you have always done, snatch a goat that wanders too close for a drink, or a calf that strays from the herd, you were suddenly cast as the villain. You weren't just a predator anymore. You were a malevolent force, a pest deliberately sabotaging their manifest destiny to cover the planet in fences and farms. The injustice was staggering. You, who had existed in this very river since before their species could even walk upright, were now branded a trespasser, a home wrecker. They were the invaders, yet you were the past. Their failures became your fault. If a seasonal flood, a natural part of the river's rhythm for eons, washed away their poorly constructed mud brick homes. It was the river god's anger. And you were the river god's most visible representative. You became the scapegoat for their own ignorance of hydrology. If a fisherman went missing, it wasn't because he was a clumsy fool who fell out of his papyrus raft. It was because the crocodile demon dragged him to a watery hell. You were blamed for everything. You were the ultimate villain, declared guilty for the crime of simply existing in a home that was yours long before they even knew what a home was. So, what is the cynical takeaway from this first, deeply confusing chapter of your relationship with humanity? What was the ultimate lesson from the ancient world? It was this: being worshipped is merely the preamble to being exploited. Being elevated to the status of a symbol is just another way of saying you've been painted as a target. Humanity's first great gift to you was a fatal identity crisis. They put you on a pedestal because it gave them a much better angle when they decided to throw their spears. They called you a god so that killing you felt like a heroic act. It was the foundation of a long and tragic partnership, one built entirely on their needs, their fears, and their boundless capacity for self-serving hypocrisy. The world turned. Empires rose and fell. The age of confused superstition slowly gave way to an age of organized religion, commerce, and systematic thinking. For you, this was not an improvement. The perception of you shifted once again. You were no longer a god to be appeased, but a resource to be quantified and a symbol to be moralized. To the medieval mind, a mind obsessed with bestiaries and Christian fables, you were no longer a local river deity. You were a universal symbol of evil and deceit. It was in this era that the myth of Crocodile Terce was born and cemented into the human imagination. The storytellers and so-called naturalists of the time claimed that you would weep piteously for your victim's head even as you devoured its body. It was, for them, the perfect metaphor for hypocrisy, a creature that feigned sorrow while committing a monstrous act. You became a living, breathing symbol of Satan, a treacherous beast lurking in the waters, representing the dangers of heresy and the false terce of the unrepentant sinner. Your very biology was repurposed as a tool for their sermons. This new, demonic reputation was just the philosophical justification for the next phase of your misery, the age of systematic exploitation. The real trouble began when their nascent capitalism intersected with their burgeoning global exploration. You were no longer just a local pest or a symbol of evil. You were a potential product. And the product they desired most was your skin. That tough, armored, beautifully patterned hide that had served you so well as a defense against the world was about to become your death sentence. The commercial trade in your skin began in earnest in the 1800s. You were walking luggage. You were a potential pair of boots, a handbag, a belt. You were an entry in a colonial merchant's ledger book, a unit of production measured in feet and inches. Your new job title was property, and the hunt was on a scale never before seen. The demand from the fashion houses of Europe and the wealthy industrialists of America was insatiable. Your skin became the ultimate luxury good, a symbol of exotic danger and opulent taste. This wasn't the work of a few villagers with spears anymore. This was an industry. Hunting parties, armed with high-powered rifles, fanned out across the globe. They slaughtered you by the tens of thousands, then by the hundreds of thousands, in the swamps of the American South, the rivers of Africa, the estuaries of Southeast Asia, and the billabongs of Australia. Your populations, which had been stable for millions of years, plummeted. You were a raw material, a biological resource to be harvested for the vanity of an ape that lived thousands of miles away. The business of your destruction was booming. Their relentless technological progress was your personal apocalypse. The fight, which was never truly a fair one, now became a one-sided slaughter. The spear was replaced by the rifle. The hunter no longer needed to risk coming close to you. He could kill you from 100 yards away, a clean, safe, efficient transaction. The clumsy dugout canoe was replaced by the noisy, polluting motorboat, allowing them to penetrate deeper into your swamps and rivers than ever before, chasing you into your last remote sanctuaries. The fight was over. Now, it was just an extermination. The tools they invented to dominate each other were now turned on you with devastating effect. As their empires expanded across the globe, they dragged you into their conflicts. Their global trade network, a marvel of logistics designed to move cotton, sugar, and spices, was now repurposed to move your salted, rolled-up hides. You were hunted to the very brink of extinction across almost your entire global range. The American alligator, the saltwater crocodile, the Nile crocodile, your entire family was facing annihilation. They had become so efficient at killing you that they very nearly succeeded in wiping you off the face of the planet entirely. All for the sake of fashion. Their civilization, with its steamships and its rifles and its department stores, was fueled by your extinction. You gave them your skin, and in return, they gave you oblivion. What, then, is the deeply ironic summary of this age of systematic misery? It's that your greatest evolutionary asset became your most fatal liability. Your strength, your armor, your biological perfection, these were the very qualities that made you so desirable. You were hunted not because you were a pest or a monster, but because you were beautiful and durable. Your magnificent, protective hide was the reason they needed to destroy you. They used your strength to build their empires of commerce, and those empires, in turn, annihilated your habitat and your species. You were simply too good at being a crocodile to be allowed to exist. Then, in the latter half of the 20th century, just as your numbers were dwindling to the point of no return, the problematic primate had another one of its characteristic whiplash-inducing changes of heart. After centuries of relentless slaughter, after turning you from a god into a demon, and from a demon into a handbag, they suddenly decided you were worth saving. It was an astonishing reversal, born not of genuine empathy, but of a dawning, narcissistic realization that they were making the planet a less interesting place for themselves. And so, you were rebranded once again. In this new, modern, industrial world, you were redefined. To the scientist, you were no longer a simple reptile. You were a keystone species, an apex predator whose presence was vital to the health of the entire ecosystem. You became a data point to be studied, a subject for dissertations and ecological models. Your blood was drawn, your stomach contents were analyzed, your movements were tracked by radio transmitters. You were transformed from a monster into a biological marvel. To the burgeoning conservation movement, you became a poster child. Your toothy grin, once a symbol of demonic evil, was now plastered on fundraising pamphlets. You were the tragic, scaly face of humanity's destructive tendencies, a living, breathing reason for people to write checks. Your survival now depended on your ability to inspire guilt. But the ultimate, most surreal transformation was yet to come. You became a logo. A small, stylized, green silhouette of your body was stitched onto the chest of a cotton polo shirt. The Lacoste brand, founded by a tennis player nicknamed the Crocodile, turned your fearsome image into a global icon of preppy, aspirational leisure. You, the terrifying, primordial killing machine, were now a symbol of weekend yachting and casual Fridays. The very people whose grandparents might have worn your skin as boots were now wearing your effigy as a status symbol. You had completed the full journey of commodification, from a god to a product to a brand mascot. It is impossible to conceive of a more profound and insulting demotion. Your entire evolutionary legacy, millions of years of brutal survival, had been reduced to a piece of embroidered branding on a shirt. Your new purpose in this enlightened, modern era is perhaps the most bizarre job you've ever been given. After being hunted to near extinction, your final role is to serve as a living, breathing symbol of humanity's capacity for remorse. You are now a protected species, a spectacle. In zoos, you are a major attraction. Families press their faces against the glass, marveling at your size and stillness, the children squealing in delighted terror. You are an exhibit, a piece of living history presented for their amusement. In the wild, in the few places you are now allowed to exist, you are a tourist attraction. Boats filled with camera-clad sightseers chug through your rivers, their guides pointing you out as you bask on the mudflats. You are the star of the show, the main event in their ecotourism adventure. Your existence is no longer your own. It now serves to make them feel adventurous and environmentally conscious for having saved you. The absurdity of this preservation reaches its zenith in the institution of the crocodile farm. Here, in these concrete and chain-link facilities, they have perfected your exploitation. They breed you by the thousands. They raise you in sterile, crowded pens, feeding you processed pellets of fish meal and vitamins. They have taken the wild, unpredictable, and dangerous business of hunting you and turned it into a clean, efficient, and highly profitable form of aquaculture. And for what purpose? Not, for the most part, to release you back into the wild. No, the primary purpose of most of these farms is to supply the very same luxury leather trade that almost wiped you out in the first place. They have simply streamlined the supply chain. They have removed the inconvenient variable of nature from the equation of your destruction. Now, they can produce flawless, unscarred hides to meet market demand, without having to bother with messy things like swamps and ecosystems. It is the absolute pinnacle of cynical efficiency. They have managed to turn your conservation into a for-profit industry that feeds the very vanity that caused the problem. This allows them the ultimate luxury. They can have their crocodile skin handbag and their clear conscience too. They can point to the conservation efforts of the farm while simultaneously fueling the demand that necessitates it. It's a perfect, self-perpetuating loop of hypocrisy. So what does this conservation actually feel like from your perspective? Is it a safe haven? Or is it a comfortable, climate-controlled prison? In the zoo or the farm, you are fed. You will never go hungry. You are safe from predators. You are safe from the violent territorial disputes that defined your adult life. You are, in essence, retired. But you are also stripped of everything that makes you a crocodile. The hunt, the patient, silent waiting, the explosive ambush, it's all gone. Your instincts, honed over 200 million years, have been rendered obsolete. You are a machine built for a purpose you are no longer allowed to fulfill. You are a god of the hunt, forced to subsist on dead chickens tossed into your enclosure once a day. You live in a carefully curated, heavily managed environment, a stage set designed to look like a wilderness, but with none of its soul. You are surrounded by the constant, dull chatter of your destroyer's descendants. They point their cameras, their flashes reflecting in your ancient, impassive eyes. They narrate your existence to their children. Look, he's not moving. Is he real? Wow, look at all those teeth. You become a living museum exhibit, a biological relic maintained for the education and entertainment of the species that conquered your world. They marvel at your wildness from the absolute safety of a concrete barrier or a reinforced pane of glass. They desire the thrill of proximity to a predator, but with none of the actual risk. They have curated your danger, packaged it, and sold it as a family-friendly afternoon outing. From your perspective, lying in your chlorinated pool under artificial lights, it must feel more like a life sentence in a minimum security facility where the wardens are all endlessly fascinated by you. And so we arrive at the final, most profound irony of your modern existence. What is the ultimate, cynical truth of your long and tortured relationship with the human race? It is this: after taking everything from you, your rivers, your swamps, your freedom, your skin, your very life, they now spend millions of dollars to keep a remnant of your species alive in a cage, primarily so they can feel better about themselves. Your survival is no longer a matter of evolutionary fitness. It is a matter of their public relations. You are a project, a cause, a living monument to their ability to regret. They nearly erased you from the planet out of greed and vanity, and now they preserve you, also out of vanity, the vanity of appearing to be responsible, caring stewards of the natural world. The final punchline is the most brutal of all. Your tragic legacy is one of complete and utter subjugation. They have controlled your narrative from the very beginning. They defined you as a god when they needed a symbol of power. They defined you as a demon when they needed a symbol of evil. They defined you as a product when they needed your skin. And now, they have defined you as a symbol of their own redemption. At no point in this long history were you ever just allowed to be what you are, a crocodile. They have taken your meaning as surely as they took your habitat. You are no longer a creature of the wild. You are a carefully managed symbol, a living testament to humanity's breathtaking capacity for both wanton destruction and deeply self-congratulatory remorse. And the worst part? After all of this, after becoming a global icon, a brand, a logo, you still don't get a single penny from the sale of those little polo shirts. You are, and always have been, the most famous, most feared, and most thoroughly exploited unpaid intern in the history of the world. This modern prison of kindness represents the final stage of your domestication, a process far more complete than that of any dog or cow. Those creatures were bred for servitude, their wild instincts reshaped over generations to serve a purpose, to herd, to guard, to provide milk or meat. Their bargain with humanity, while unequal, was at least a transaction. They gave up their freedom for a guaranteed place within the human world. Your case is far more perverse. You were not bred for a new purpose. You were preserved as a relic of an old one, a living fossil kept around to remind your captors of a world they have otherwise tamed. You are not a partner in their civilization. You are a prisoner of it. Your value lies not in what you can do for them now, but in what you represent about what they once did. You are a walking, breathing apology letter, written in flesh and scutes. Imagine the sheer, mind-numbing boredom of it all. Your entire neurobiology is a finely tuned instrument for a single kind of symphony: the patient stalk, the explosive ambush, the violent dismemberment. Your senses are designed to detect the subtle ripple of a gazelle's hoof touching the water's surface from 50 yards away. Your body is built to lie motionless for hours, conserving every joule of energy for one single, decisive moment of cataclysmic action. Yet, you live in a world where the most exciting event of the day is the splash of a dead rat hitting the water from a keeper's bucket. It's like taking a grand concert piano, a masterpiece of engineering capable of expressing the deepest complexities of music, and using it solely as a doorstop. The dissonance between your potential and your reality is the quiet, unspoken tragedy of your daily life. The tourists who peer into your enclosure see a lazy, lethargic beast. They comment on how you never move. They mistake your profound, instinct-starved depression for contentment. They see your stillness not as the coiled spring of a predator waiting for a chance that will never come, but as the placid relaxation of a creature without a care in the world. They have no concept of the millions of years of evolutionary pressure that forged you into this perfect waiting machine. They just see a big lizard getting a tan. It is the ultimate misunderstanding. They have saved your body, but have utterly discarded your essence. They have preserved the vessel, but have emptied it of its spirit. This is the great conservation swindle. And what of your wild brethren? The few who still persist in the shrinking pockets of wilderness humanity has not yet fully paved over or polluted. Their existence is a tightrope walk over a pit of fire. They must navigate a world of engine noise, of chemical runoff from farms, of plastic waste that chokes their rivers. They must compete with human fishermen for their food and evade the ever-present threat of poachers who still see your skin as a quick paycheck. Their freedom is a conditional one, a privilege granted by human committees and wildlife management plans. They are allowed to exist only so long as they don't become an inconvenience. The moment a wild crocodile attacks a human or their livestock, the old narrative reemerges. The monster is back. The pest must be controlled. They are on parole, living under the constant surveillance and judgment of their human overlords. So, this is your complete legacy. You have been the subject of their myths, the victim of their fashions, and now the object of their sentimental, self-serving pity. You have been deified, demonized, commodified, and finally curated. Throughout this entire sprawling history, your own perspective was, of course, utterly irrelevant. You were a blank, scaly screen onto which humanity projected its changing fears, desires, and vanities. You are a testament to the fact that for humans, the natural world is rarely appreciated on its own terms. It is either a thing to be feared, a thing to be conquered, a thing to be used, or a thing to be preserved as a monument to their own power. The one thing it is never allowed to be is simply itself. You, the mighty crocodile, the last living link to the age of dinosaurs, have finally been tamed. Not by a whip or a chain, but by the far more insidious tool of conservation. You have been saved into obsolescence, and you will spend the rest of your unnaturally long, unnaturally safe, and unnaturally pointless life as a living symbol of that final, total victory. Let's linger for a moment on the sheer absurdity of your modern branding. The polo shirt. Consider the journey from the muddy banks of the Nile to the pristine, manicured lawns of a country club. A journey you never made, but your image did. A French tennis player, René Lacoste, was nicknamed the alligator by the press for his tenacity on the court. He embraced it and asked a friend to draw a crocodile to be embroidered on his blazer. It was one of the first times a brand logo was ever displayed on the outside of clothing. You, a creature of silent, patient ambush, became the unwitting pioneer of modern apparel marketing. Your image, once a hieroglyph representing a god of immense power, was now being used to sell sportswear to people who considered a spirited game of doubles to be a strenuous workout. The irony compounds with every layer. The very demographic most likely to purchase these shirts, the affluent, the comfortable, the civilized, were the direct beneficiaries of the colonial and industrial systems that had financed your wholesale slaughter in the first place. They wore your symbol as a badge of casual elegance, completely divorced from the bloody reality of the skin trade that made your relatives into wallets and shoes. Your image became a status symbol for the culture that had rendered your actual existence a liability. You are both the product and the logo, the victim and the mascot. It's a closed loop of commercialism so perfect, so cynical, it's almost beautiful in its awfulness. You were too dangerous to live, but too iconic not to sell. And as science progressed, they found new ways to be fascinated by you, which only deepened the indignity. They studied your immune system, discovering that your blood contains potent antimicrobial peptides. You, who live your life marinating in a bacterial soup of filth and rotting flesh, are remarkably resistant to infection. This discovery, of course, didn't lead to a newfound respect for your evolutionary resilience. It led to research into how they could synthesize these compounds for their own medicinal use. Once again, your usefulness was being calculated. You are now a potential source of novel antibiotics, a floating biofoundry. They may have stopped hunting you for your skin in many places, but they have simply started prospecting you for your biochemistry. The exploitation just became more sophisticated, more microscopic. Think about the gaze of the scientist versus the gaze of the tourist. One looks at you and sees a complex biological system, a marvel of adaptation, a puzzle to be solved. The other looks at you and sees a cool monster, a thrilling photo opportunity, a story to tell their friends back home. But both gazes share a common feature. They are entirely about them. Their curiosity, their entertainment, their needs. Your role is to be the passive object of their attention. Whether you are being tagged, biopsied, or photographed, you are serving their purpose. You are a prop in their story, a story of scientific discovery, or a story of a fun family vacation. This is the final prison, the prison of being interesting. It is, perhaps, the most inescapable one of all. As long as you are interesting to them, you will never be left alone. You will be managed, conserved, studied, and displayed. Your life will be subject to their plans, your habitat subject to their zoning laws, your very genetic code subject to their analysis. The alternative, of course, is worse. The moment you cease to be interesting, the moment the tourist dollars dry up, the research grants go elsewhere, and a more compelling, more charismatic megafauna captures their fleeting attention. That is the moment your protected status becomes truly precarious. Your survival depends on your ability to hold the attention of the very ape that drove you to the brink. It is a terrifying, perpetual audition for the right to exist. Let's deconstruct the modern sanctuary. It's a word dripping with noble intention. A place of refuge, of safety. But for whom? It's a sanctuary for the human conscience. People visit these places, pay their entrance fees, and feel a sense of virtue. They are supporting conservation. They are helping to protect a magnificent creature. They leave feeling good about themselves, having participated in a positive, restorative act. But from your perspective, the place is not a sanctuary. It is a showroom. It is a carefully managed stage. and you are the lead actor in a play about the wilderness, performed daily for an audience that has destroyed the real thing. The backdrop is painted with trees and rocks. The lighting is a mix of sun and heat lamps, and your co-stars are other prisoners. The script is simple. You lie there, look menacingly prehistoric, and occasionally eat a dead animal on cue. It is a hollow pantomime of the life you were built to live. The ultimate irony is that your most famous mythological trait, the crocodile tears, was a complete fabrication, yet your modern existence is the most potent argument for its truth. Your entire species has been made to weep for the world you lost, a world devoured by the very beings who now pay to watch you mourn. They look at you, safe behind their barriers, and feel a flicker of sadness for your plight, a manufactured, sanitized grief. They shed a tear for the vanishing wilderness, then get back in their air-conditioned SUVs and drive home on paved roads, their brief, cathartic encounter with nature complete. They are the ones weeping the false tears now. They cry for the victim they created, feeling better for the act of crying itself, while changing nothing about the system that ensures you remain a prisoner. Your legacy is a silent one because your voice was never part of the conversation. You have been a god without a scripture, a demon without a motive, a product without a say in your own production, and a conservation icon without a vote in your own management plan. You are the silent, scaly screen upon which human history has painted its own evolving self-portrait. In the ancient world, they painted a portrait of fear and superstition. In the age of empires, they painted a portrait of greed and dominion. And today, in the modern world, they paint a portrait of guilt and hypocritical remorse. The painting has always been about the artist, never about the canvas. Your final, tragic truth is one of profound irrelevance. To the universe, to the grand sweep of evolution, you were a success story, 200 million years of brutal, efficient perfection. But in the tiny, recent sliver of history dominated by Homo sapiens, your perfection was your flaw, your strength was your weakness, and your survival now depends on the whims of a species that has proven to be both astonishingly creative and catastrophically destructive. You are a king in exile, a god in a petting zoo. You are the enduring, silent legacy of a world that was, and a stark, living symbol of the one that is. You will outlive the individual humans who gawk at you, but you will forever live by their rules, a relic preserved in the amber of their inconsistent, self-serving, and ultimately suffocating affection. You have survived the age of dinosaurs, but it remains to be seen if you can survive the age of man.